All right. Well, welcome to the March edition of the AI in Local Government Network. Glad to have here. Hold on a second here. Perfect. So again, just a quick reminder of why we're here, right? We're here to help foster collaboration, share knowledge, and spur innovation within local government. So these are things that I think we're all passionate about doing, all passionate about learning how we can use AI and AI tools to augment and help the work we're doing in local government. So we have three individuals with us who are going to be speaking to us today who come from a really a kind of a wide variety of backgrounds, right? If one from the West Coast to the East Coast, in the middle there, Colorado. So excited to have these folks talk to us today and learn from them and hopefully spur some innovation and share some knowledge with us. So first up, I want to invite um, our new friend of the network, Nichole Sterling. Nichole is a board of trustees for the town of Nederland, Colorado, and founder of Women Leading AI. So a lot of her background is in the tech space, and she has a huge passion for really rural and small local government across the United States. So would love to, Nichole, feel free to join in and love to turn things over to you and share what you're working on and more about Women Leading AI.
Yeah, thank you, Micah. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
All right, wonderful. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I kind of sit at this intersection of a few in a few different worlds. So as Micah mentioned, I sit on the board of trustees for Nederland, Colorado, very small town, only 1,400 people. And that's been a real pleasure. I was a it was by not necessarily by accident, but I was so curious as to how this whole world operated, and so I got involved, and I've loved it, and so I'm actually up for election. We have our election happening next month. So I sit in that world, but I'm also a serial startup operator, having worked in the software defined networking world for the last about almost 5 years. And then, as Micah mentioned, I'm also a co-founder of Women Defining AI, and our mission there is two-pronged. It's on one side, we're trying to demystify AI for non-technical women and non-binary individuals, but then we're also trying to elevate the voices of women AI, because we know that when AI is not built with diverse teams, we run into a lot of the ethical and irresponsible use of AI. And so we want to make sure that women's voices are being elevated in the not just the creation of it, but also the deployment. So it's really those three intersections that I sit at that has led me to investigate a potential idea to help local government integrate more AI into their operations. Some of you may have even received my survey that's out there, as I've been trying to reach out to small towns and ask them about how they might integrate AI more into their world. So my idea is to essentially give small towns, especially small towns and rural towns, big city decision-making tools without the big city price tag that often comes with it. And I'll give you a few examples. So the problem that I've seen that I started to investigate, and it all started when I asked an administrator if she'd be willing to start to teach the staff around AI and start to automate some of our processes. And she said, absolutely. Can you help me find somebody that can do that for us, like a consultant? And I said, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. And so I started looking into it, and I couldn't find anyone that really specialized in municipal government, but that was also going to teach AI how I wanted it to be taught to our staff. And so then that just led me down a path of really looking into municipal government software in general. Because as I mentioned, I'm a tech entrepreneur and just operator. And I found that the software in the GovTech space is highly fragmented. It's got a lot of single use cases that are usually typically geared towards bigger cities, right? Might handle, maybe a piece of software will handle the open records requests, right? Things like single use cases, again, automate a lot of a large volume of things, which doesn't really fit for small municipal governments. In fact, there was a Civic Plus survey that was released in 2021 where 91% of big cities, and meaning over 50,000 residents, were happy with their software. But when it came to smaller areas, only about 61% of small towns under 10,000 residents were satisfied with their software, and only 72% of small towns with 10,000 to 50,000 residents were actually satisfied with their software. I thought, huh. And so I just kept peeling it back. And come to find out, things like digital twins are only used by the top 5% of cities, right? The biggest of the cities. Digital twins meaning a virtual representation of the town to run simulations against. These are really helpful when we're trying to run simulations and predict either disasters that might happen, or you may even want to predict economic development or whatnot. But the point being is that there was just a lot out there that were being used for bigger cities, not so much smaller towns. Not only that, but of course, government is complex and regulated. And the more small towns that I talk to, they're like, yeah, I can get that piece of software, but again, it does one thing, and I can't tailor it to my specific needs in order to help me be proactive and strategic. And then as I started to get more information from the survey that I have out there, small towns also don't have a great way of pulling their data together to get insights. And in fact, they see, and one of the main reasons is because they don't have in-house expertise to do that, right? The lack of in-house expertise, 70% of the towns that I'm surveying say that's the biggest problem that they have. That's what's getting in the way of them actually adopting some of these more advanced digital tools. So I thought, well, how would I, if I were, in a position to make something happen, how would I get small towns in a position to be more strategic, to create more resilient towns, to be proactive, and to get them tools and software that's tailored to their needs? And I came to the conclusion I would just sort of blow the whole thing up and create something new, especially in this era of AI. So I'm actually investigating the creation of a software platform specifically for small towns that puts their day-to-day around what's most important for them, which is their town. And so this would be a virtual representation or a digital twin of their town and of some of their town staff. And I'll explain what that means. So again, if you're a small town, you may not need a single use case software. You need something that's more holistic, that, maybe helps you with the core requests, but also when somebody submits development plans, you can have AI assess them, analyze them, mark them up, and present to you whether or not that actually meets the code instead of having our folks. I know personally in our small town, it takes anywhere from weeks to a few months to actually turn those around back to the developer or to the resident who's trying to build. But so a small town that has a platform that's sort of integrated, because once they have that digital twin, now they can do other things with it. They can run a traffic simulation based off that development proposal. They can run some emergency preparedness. We, being a small town, have half a person to get dedicated to emergency preparedness. It scares the living crap out of me, right? When we have a festival or anything, to be able to simulate where we should have fire readiness, police stationed, even the restrooms, that is things that takes weeks, months sometimes to just pull together. But with AI, we have the ability to do that much more quickly. Economic development, things like childcare and housing are really important to small towns. So this platform I'm envisioning is actually going to be made specifically for their use cases. And attached to this digital town or digital twin is a digital assistant ecosystem. Because here's the other problem with small towns. It hurts. It hurts tremendously when we lose somebody. And we're starting to lose more and more people due to retirement. And so if you think about when you log in and you talk to ChatGPT or whatnot, that is in a sense a digital assistant. But if you had digital assistants built specifically for municipal government, because we know how hard it is to attract and retain and onboard new employees, but if you have digital assistants specifically supporting each one of your town employees, these digital assistants are trained on those employees' jobs. They can help them with their day-to-day work. They can actually onboard them when they're new. And in that moment, when we do lose somebody, they become the transition to those new folks that are coming on board. And so this is the crazy grand idea that I have to help municipals, especially small town municipal government, get into the era of AI, but to also help them continue to build their resilient cities. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about is is the citizen-facing part of this. Because if you can imagine, if small towns now have access to a digital twin that helps them simulate their environments, predict needs, get access to grants that they need, advocate to the state for funds that they might need, citizens can also access this same digital twin. And when citizens can access a digital twin, not only could they potentially get services that they need faster, information that they need more quickly, but then if you think about citizens being able to have their own digital assistants, now we can be proactive in how we get them their services. For instance, we approved a new address sign last year. We live in a very rural area, lots of trees, forest area, and no consistency whatsoever around address signs. Well, this became a public safety issue because the fire department and police department were not able to actually get to or find certain houses because they weren't easily and adequately marked. And so in this scenario, I'm thinking, okay, somebody like a citizen comes on to our digital twin, maybe looking for land records or whatnot, or they have a question about a previous decision that was made by the board of trustees. Well, our small town should also be able to say, oh, hey, this citizen hasn't actually ordered their address sign. Hello, citizen, would you like me to go ahead and order that for you? Right? So again, it allows our small towns to be proactive. It allows citizens to get services that they need. And then when you think about the idea for citizens to be able to place make in this new era of AI, for instance, we have a parcel of land where we're accepting proposals in terms of how it could be developed. Now citizens can go in and reimagine their place through technology, which is super cool to think about. So I'm here to say, yes, I exist as a city council member. Yes, I exist as the co-founder of Women Defining AI to elevate the voices of women. But I also am here to say I'm also an innovator within government. And Micah has graciously allowed me to come in and speak, and then also ask that if there's anybody that this resonates with, I would so appreciate you to fill out the survey that I have out there. And even if this doesn't resonate, I'd still love to hear from you. And so, Micah, I'm guessing that we would send out the link to the survey somehow after.
Correct. Yep. Happy to do that.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm here. That's what I'm trying to do is just shake up the industry a little bit. So thank you again so much.
Well, thank you, Nichole. And the industry needs some shaking right now. That's for sure. So appreciate your work you're doing. We'll send out the survey around the digital twinning and things like that for rural America and rural towns and small towns across the country. So if you are in a small town, or maybe your neighbors in a small town or something like that, feel free to send it out. We'll get it out to all y'all after this here. And if you want to learn more about Nichole and connect with her, encourage you to reach out to her on LinkedIn. Here's her LinkedIn profile. Connect with her, pick her brain. A wealth of information there, and truly a heart for elevating women's voices and elevating small towns, which is really, really cool. So thank you again, Nichole, for spending some time with us this afternoon. So next, I also want to invite David. David has become a fast colleague of mine in the chat GPT and AI space. Spoke a couple of times on the phone and messaged each other on LinkedIn, and just really excited to hear from him. He has just an absolute wealth of experience in city management specifically, and then takes that and has just a really high grasp of reality around AI and generative AI systems. So, David, take it away, sir. I think you might be muted still. There, oh, there we go. Should be good now. Nope, not quite. Still nothing. I see your mute icon still on there, going on and off. Give us a couple minutes here. And while we're waiting, so you can see his 15 years of experience, Georgia, Kentucky, now Oregon, or Oregon. I'm never sure how to pronounce that state. Sometimes I feel like it's a hit or miss sometimes.
All right, we all good now?
Good now, David. Thank you.
All right, so my big question is, can I share my screen?
Lower all.
You should be good now, David.
All right. Okay, so I guess if we can share the screen, yes, no?
Yep, you should be good. Let's see if we can do that
All
here.
right, let's see if this works for me here. All right, and hopefully the first thing that you all see is my dog Cody. I always tell folks that if my presentation bombs, at least you'll like and appreciate the photo of the dog. So that's a Clumber Spaniel. They're not that common. We have two of them. This is Cody and got Mr. Snuffleupagus. So we're going to try to advance the screen. All right. So I was asked to talk about some of what we're doing within the ChatGPT spectrum and also AI as a whole. And I'll tell you that ChatGPT pretty much gets a lot of credit, but the reality is there are a lot of tools out there. The key to AI, depending on what tool you're using, ChatGPT is a good example, is the prompts. Learning the prompts. Anyone can open it up, start typing, learn things, but it's really the prompts. And so I wanted to go into a couple examples of how we're using it in North Bend and how it's actually creating some efficiencies for us. We use it heavily in community engagement and feedback. I've given you an example of a prompt that, for instance, we might use. We have a town hall meeting and we collect from everybody all of the comments, whether they come in on our online system or they actually type them or write them. We actually then pile them all into a document. And we very quickly will use ChatGPT to analyze those. Grant writing is a regular use of these tools. ChatGPT is not the only platform we use, but I will tell you that when we get a grant application, we decide that we're going to go after it. The first thing that we do is grab all of the questions and the application. We then will shoot out a link to the organization that is funding that grant to figure out what their priorities are. And then we will then submit into, say, ChatGPT, our specific prompts and actually have it work with us and craft with us the grant application. If you think that that's not successful, I will tell you that our city right now has a 98.2% success rate in the last 3 years on its grants. And so it has, and when I tell you we're a city that's got a general fund balance of about, not a general fund operating budget of about 6 million. and we are well north of $15 million in grants in the last 3 years. Planning and promotion, when it goes into writing press releases, I will tell you, I have a background of being an investigative journalist. I also ran a IT company in the Silicon Valley for 5 years. And so writing press releases and social media doesn't just come natural to everybody. And so we are using AI on a regular basis for our press releases, and also our social media post. Almost every social media post that you see, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, or any of the other platforms such as Nextdoor, we're using social media. And we've cross-trained. Our mayor is a huge advocate now of using this technology. And so it is becoming a little contagious. Budget analysis and forecasting is another example of where we're using this technology. We, for instance, took last year's budget, and we were looking at public safety. We were trying to delve in and trying to figure out if there was a better way to manage staffing and overtime. And we would continue with the prompts and the data, and started to see some very interesting trends. And so it helped us go back to the department heads and ask them to refine and restructure a bit. And it's paid off huge dividends. Those dividends are important because when you have collective bargaining agreements, every percentage matters at the bargaining table. Our fire chief recently worked on our emergency management plan. We had a very old plan. At one point, they had transferred it from the fire department over to the police department, and we were trying to get it back to the fire department again. And so this was an opportunity for us to use the technology to actually review the plan, review other agency plans that were published, and then poke holes in ours, find out whether or not we had specific elements that weren't in there, especially in the area of earthquakes and tsunamis. And so our city council recently approved the updated plan. And then, of course, I can't say enough about how we use it on the local economy and business support area. We are always looking for opportunities to help support our local businesses. And so we're always scouring for partnerships, grants, strategies. For instance, we met recently with a mall. You know, new malls haven't been built in decades. And so they're suffering. And malls that are going to data centers, well, ours isn't. And so we utilized the AI platforms to develop 50 interesting ways that we can help build synergy and promote our local mall. And they're starting to actually execute those. They're interesting ideas. They are now forming a merchants association. And so we're seeing a lot of cross-pollination. And so their foot traffic is starting to significantly increase. And again, it was just the city coming together with all of our strategic partners and meeting with mall management and merchants to bring that about. So Micah had mentioned that, you know, I reached out to him, and I already disclosed that I used to be an investigative journalist. And yes, I am a data wonk of sorts, but I recognize that not everybody is. And so I had reached out to Micah probably in July of last year and said, hey, I've got this crazy notion of idea. We're a city, and usually cities are always looking for funds that are out there that we're just simply not collecting that we ought to be. Budgets are always tight. Ours is no different. And so I wanted to know, for instance, if we potentially had vacation rentals that were operating within our city that otherwise were not paying the taxes. And so we have a transient lodging tax, funny name, transient, not being transient like homeless or anything, but think of it as a tourism tax. And so when you stay in the hotels, obviously you pay a hotel motel or local tax. Those are the transient lodging taxes. And so I had this notion that if we could take our utility records and our property tax records and sort of commingle them, things that I would normally do in a database or spreadsheet, but use AI to do it, would it work? And so Mike and I actually worked collectively on this. We both took different approaches, but I will tell you that we loaded the data from two different spreadsheets. So we had gotten the property tax data, the utility customer data, put it in there. We then pre-processed it. So we had to make sure that it was standardized. And when I say standardized, like last names are in last name fields and street addresses are in street addresses field, so that it's not all commingled. And then we wanted to filter out the data because our local zip code is 97459. But of course, zip codes do not follow city boundaries, and so we're cognizant about that. But the key is that if you're in the city of North Bend, you either have a 3-digit or a 4-digit street address. So the numerics matter to us. If you have a 5-digit or 6-digit address and you're in that zip code, you're not in our city limits. So that's very, very critical to know. We compared the names and the addresses. What we're trying to do is find if you have properties that are owned in the community, but you're not actively there. Are you potentially operating that property as a vacation rental? And are you just happen to be under the radar or maybe ignorant about whether or not you should be paying transient lodging taxes? And so the folks that stay, generally those taxes are paid for by them or they're passed through whoever has the rental. And so that was the goal. I will tell you that this is what happened. And I'm going to walk you through very quickly. So you have tax records, utility records, I have a scenario, and then I have an action. So the first is on the tax records. I went zoning use. So from the tax records, is the record a residential property? I want to know whether or not it was a house. Don't care about commercial or industrial buildings or anything like, say, apartments. I wanted to know if it was a single family residential. So I used the tax records because they have a field that codes it whether or not it's a single family residential, say R1. And if so, I wanted it in the data set. So basically I'm taking a large data set and I'm moving it smaller. In this case, I now only have my single family houses. I then am looking at the tax records because if you pay property taxes, you're the owner of record. Your name's on the public record. So everything I used here was public record. And so in this case, I take the owner name from the tax records and I wanted to have AI look at the billing name for the utility records and wanted to know whether or not it matched. What was the thought process here? If I own a house, but someone else is paying the utilities, the thought process is it's a rental property. It's not a vacation rental. It's actually a second home or you're renting it out. So the next step was to look at in the tax records, they have what's called a site address. Physically, where's the taxable property located? And then they have what's called a situs address. And that's really, I call it the mailing address. So you have a situs address where it's located, and then you have the mailing address. Where's the tax bill go? Sorry, I flipped those, but in this case, in the tax records, does the site address where the physical property is located match the mailing address on the utility records? If it matches, then I'm sort of excluding it because it's pretty much owner occupied. If you're the person on the tax rolls and you're the person on the utility bills and the mailing addresses are matching, you're most likely there. There's a reason behind that. So I go to the last line here. I look at the mailing address of the tax records. which is different than where the actual property is located. So is the tax bill being mailed somewhere else? If it is, mark it. Then I look at the utility bill and say, is the utility bill's address going to another address? The reason that's important is if I have a property that is a rental that potentially is a vacation rental, the renters aren't paying the utilities, the owner is. And so that's why I want to see, what's the address. And so if they don't match, immediately flag. So here's what we had in the end. All of this was done with AI and a code interpreter. And so I won't get into the nitty gritty, but it was all done with a couple spreadsheets and code interpreter in ChatGPT. And so we have 2254 physical property records in North Bend. I looked up census and knew that 59.1% of those are owner occupied. So basically about 1,332 properties. I used the code interpreter. And so in the backside, again, I do programming. I told you that, but you didn't have to do any programming for what I did here. You just had to understand how to clean up a little data, some little string functions. But we used some Python code. We uploaded all of the files, did the match, put in the prompts, and it told me that I had 189 potential properties that matched my criteria that were likely to be vacation rentals. We then used ChatGPT to create a letter, template letter that said, hey, we're the city of North Bend and we're just doing an inquiry. And we just want to verify that this is property is not being used as a vacation rental. If it is, we're given amnesty. And you may not be aware that you have to register the property. We've registered 42 confirmed short-term rentals and now are receiving those taxes to the city. I won't bore you. Like I said, you hear a lot by ChatGPT, but I'll make this PowerPoint available in a PDF. But there are a lot of tools that we use. And so I call these my GovLove AI tools. And so, for instance, you see Adobe Firefly. This is great. We create very high customized images. In fact, every image that you've seen in this presentation, with the exception of my dog and then the one that Micah provided for this presentation, was all generated by prompts through various tools. You hear a lot of folks use Canva. In fact, our community development director uses Canva a lot, but there's a lot of AI tools in there. For instance, Magic Write for text generation, Magic Design for visual presentations, and more. And so it really simplifies. We're still doing the base work, but it's making us even better. It's making us more efficient. It's allowing us to do things quicker. And there are a lot of things that we do. For instance, I haven't even mentioned the fact that, when you get 50 or 60 applicants for a job, you remove all of the identifying information, you compare it and rank it to the job description, and it actually will rank order and tell you why certain candidates are better than the other. Again, you still have to take the time to go through the applicants, but it makes us that much more efficient. So I've given you probably about 25 different tools that we're using here at the city in some form or fashion. And I'll make this list available, but being respective of the time, I will roll it back over to you, Micah.
Well, thank you, David. Really, really cool example. And one thing to note too, on the example of the property records, this was being done which seems like I know it's not that long ago in real world, but it seems like a lifetime ago in the AI world, right? Right. This isn't with the latest model of ChatGPT or Mistral or Claude or things like that. I can't imagine how much more proficient it'll be today, right? This is when code interpreter was still a thing.
Exactly.
So really, really cool and things you can do with these different data sets, right? You just have all these different data sets. Go ahead and look at ways you can anonymize the data, ways you can leverage publicly available data and information to do that. Let me go here because I want you guys to be able to know how to connect with David here. So here is his LinkedIn page here. Feel free to connect with him, pick his brain. As you can probably tell in the last 15 minutes, this is a very, very smart individual with a lot of different experience in local government and leveraging tools to the betterment in local government, like his example with grants and whatnot. So feel free to reach out to David. And David, I'll get a copy of the presentation from you too, because I think a lot of people would really enjoy that GovLove AI tools and the rest of your presentation as well too. So if we have to give a copyright to ELGL, just let me know if we have to do a little trademark on the side there for them.
Yeah, I could get a little trouble for their GovLove stuff.
Yeah, but I think it should be fine. Cool. Well, thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Micah.
Next up, I want to invite Mr. Robert here. He is the director of the Upper Coastal Plain Council of Governments in the North Carolina area. So Robert, I know you have a screen to share here as well too, so I'm going to stop my screen share. That way you can get things lined up. Excited to have David or to have Robert here join us and discuss some things. And it looks like you're still muted there, Robert.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
So yeah, hopefully you can see my intro page here with the COG logo. How my screen decided to work today is the preview slides are on one screen and my presentation's on the other. So if anything appears off at some point, just let me know. I'm Robert Hiett. I'm the executive director for the Upper Coastal Plain Council of Governments. And we are over in North Carolina along the I-95 corridor. We're about an hour east of Raleigh. We're a 5-county area. I've got 5 counties, 41 municipalities in our area, and we have a combined regional population of about 287,000. So, in this area, we have one small metro city, and the rest of our towns are considered rural in nature. Some of them are average kinds of towns that you see every day, but a majority of them are very small, and they do a whole lot with a handful of people, and that's fairly reflective of a lot of the municipalities you can find across North Carolina. So just a little bit about us. We do aging, workforce, and planning programs throughout the region. Our aging programs help our senior citizens, anything to find resources to refer senior citizens or their caregivers to other partners that can help them out. Our workforce development, if any of y'all have worked with workforce development in the past, it's basically the name of the game is training people for jobs. And then our planning and development does anything from traditional planning to grant writing, grant administration, project management, so on and so forth. So our agency budget runs about 13 to 14 million a year, and we're managing 110 million of infrastructure projects and other grants for our member governments. A little bit about me. I've been in the COG world for 23 years. I've held a few positions here and there. I think Micah wanted me to kind of note the bullet at the bottom, which is a long, long time ago. I went through North Georgia College and got a systems administrator certification. Technology has always been a love of mine, definitely a side hobby. I did a lot in the PC gaming background, industry background. I did, like many people in the early part of your government career, I had a side hustle, and that was gaming. So I did some contract work for some major gaming publishing studios over the years. I was a speaker at the Austin Game Developer Conference a few years back. And I have game development credits for Star Wars: The Old Republic. I'm one of the people listed in those game credits. And I'm an AI enthusiast, I think, just like most of y'all here on the Zoom today. So that said, taking a quick look at AI in government, you know, a little over a year ago, before ChatGPT came out, people really weren't thinking a whole lot about AI. You know, you heard about it, mainly you associated it with things going on with programmers, and most of us were busy working with our day-to-day office productivity software tools. Today, you're swimming in AI. There's applications coming out every day. There's new things being launched on social media, newsletters going out all over the place, and it's almost like now it's a little bit of paralysis by analysis. Which tool do I need? That looks nifty, but it doesn't have X, you know, so I don't need it right now. Or some other tool may be too comprehensive. And so I think we're going to go through a period coming up here where, particularly for those of us in the public sector, what I would think of as kind of a refinement period where AI begins to look a little bit more at the public sector and what are our needs, and then working with us to develop products that really meet those needs. And a large county or a large city is going to have completely different needs most of the time than a small government with 10 or less employees. But I think everyone can benefit to a certain extent. When we take a look at the AI evaluation landscape for 2024, I see opportunities and challenges. So obviously, a lot of the routine software products that we're working with today, they're building AI into them, just like David mentioned in the previous presentation. So I think that people are going to get used to working with AI simply by continuing to use some of their current software applications, and then working with that AI component to produce better outcomes. In general, tools like ChatGPT or others can certainly help anybody who has to try to read, analyze, and figure out large quantities of data. I don't know about y'all, but you know, managers, planners, you know, different people that are having to deal with applications or other kinds of documents. We need more support. We've got to be able to get through these things faster, because generally we're still operating in the framework of do more with less. Your budget is what it is, and so we're trying to think about how can we multiply, you know, expand our capacity without blowing up the budget and bringing in a whole lot more people. And so again, things like ChatGPT can do that. When we think about organizational enhancements, at least today, I can see tools like ChatGPT or others definitely helping us to develop policies, policy manuals, things that need to go out in the public. We see how AI can help speed up and the planning process and make it more efficient. Things that are related to service design, response, and delivery. So that might be a little bit outside of the ChatGPT spectrum, but if you looked at last month's Zoom session for Civic AI, you had a speaker in there who, you know, is developing some AI for local government services. So again, I think there's lots of opportunity there. Human resources, training and mentoring. I think our first speaker mentioned that today. In North Carolina, we have 75% of the staff that work in rural government are either at or near retirement. And so, again, creating some GPTs that have some subject area knowledge can, one, help people be more efficient, but two, it can help that new person coming into the job and in a way pass on some institutional knowledge and ensure that they're able to research, produce, and ask questions to maintain a certain level of you know, productivity and expertise. General office administration, I think the sky's the limit there. Definitely talk with your local office administrator. Documents, contracts, procurement, and then you know, content creation and copywriting. So just producing content, like David said, social media, press releases, information briefs. These tools can do all of these things very efficiently now, and it's light years ahead of where it was last year. And so with the next generation of Chat GPT coming out sometime, I think in 2024, there's no telling what kind of leap it's going to make then. Over on the challenges side, I think particularly in smaller local governments, you have a situation where, you know, typically they're operating with a very few number of employees. So you've got to figure out who do you have internally today that could potentially learn AI, and then you've got to make budgetary room and the time for them to be able to learn it, master it, and then see how they can scale it in-house. I think right now, the typical small government, if you talk about AI or Chat GPT, they may have heard about it, but at least from what I can tell, a lot of them aren't really using it, or if they do use it, they haven't been trained how to use it, and you're only going to get into it you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. Budget availability obviously is an issue. The time scale to implement these things, how fast do you need to move, who are the key people, knowledge base. So we all have, if you get a Chat GPT subscription, you have access to a Chat GPT knowledge base, but it's the general knowledge base. And that has some value. But when you begin to look at your internal documents, you know, what does the planning department have? What does that office administrator have? What does your procurement office have that you can take and compile a knowledge base for one or more GPTs to make them that subject matter expert that you need to really move your organization into that next level of AI deployment. As was mentioned before, prompt training. There's a lot of guides out there on how to properly prompt AI. You hear prompt engineering all the time. I think not too long ago, somebody said it really well. What you really need to do is you need to understand how to ask the AI what you want it to do. It needs to be structured. Tell it what you want it to do, tell it your desired outcomes, and then you kind of have to refine from there. And I think that does require a certain level of training And so that goes back to, depending on the size of your organization, you've got to figure out who is the one that needs to be trained first, who can come in and train the other staff. And then lastly, ethical AI use training. So as we have experienced, you don't want to go build custom GPTs or build a knowledge base without having the right permission to use the material that you're putting in there. So a lot of people are still struggling with that a little bit. They may or may not know that they can't take some of the copyrighted stuff and put it in a knowledge base, but that's is certainly something that needs to be trained and looked at the local level. Excuse me for having to get a drink of water real quick. So what is our AI approach? Basically, I'm working to design an AI approach that works at an organizational level. I'm trying to make sure that we have the budget available to do it. I'm coordinating with my key staff members to design this system, and then evaluating the outcomes and adapting from there. I have my department directors currently training on how to use ChatGPT. They're going through prompt training right now. I have them working on creating an internal knowledge base. And to some extent, they're already beginning to implement ChatGPT and other application use inside their department. And then from there, they're going to refine. And then that third level is we're going to deploy it out to the line staff, and then they're going to put it in the field, and we'll begin to get feedback from them. So it'll kind of come all the way back in the system. AI products, again, there's a ton of them out there. David mentioned some earlier. Right now, in order to build what I would think of as a good set of internal expertise, we're working with ChatGPT, Claude AI, and Perplexity the most. It's not, we are working with a bunch of other products that have AI built in there to them. But for me, right now, we're working to set up an internal set of GPTs that can enhance our productivity, adaptability, and scalability. So what I want to do is I need to have a set of internal GPTs that can act as internal staff enhancers for one, and then I need to have another set of internal GPTs that can be subject matter experts on however many things we need. And then I've got an organizational account set up through GPT teams so we can share and cross collaborate where needed. AI and government services, outside of what I'm looking to do in the organization, I mentioned at the beginning, we have certain programs. So we're working on a couple of active projects to develop AI as a service and leverage and deploy it regionally, either for the benefit of our program or its participants, or for the benefit of our local governments who are members of our council of governments. I have a few custom GPTs out there right now. You can just type in these names, but Gov Assist kind of acts like a small town manager. Gov Grant will help analyze your grant applications and help you develop a grant narrative and a grant proposal. Procurement Specialist, well, we all know what procurement does. It'll help you navigate that environment. And Zoning Assistant acts kind of like a planner, zoner type person. So feel free to give them a try and let me know any feedback that you have. That's the end of the PowerPoint. Micah, do I have time to show them one GPT?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you don't mind doing that. If you don't mind walking us through one of your GPT examples. It'd be really helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to show, all right, I'm going to show Gov Grant because I think here, So what I did is I took an AARP Community Challenge grant from last year. I loaded it into GPT. This is my prompt. I told it I was going to give it 5 documents. I wanted to analyze it one at a time, confirm that it understands what is in each file. And then what I wanted it to do was give me a detailed summary about the grant application, key requirements, anything important I need to consider, and any common themes. And then, so we're going to go through it. You're going to generate this. I don't want you to be concerned with word limit, and confirm that you understand what I'm telling you to do. So it said it did. We went through the process of uploading each file. It told me what each one was at a high level. And then what it did is it started breaking down the actual grant, the scope and requirements, the deliverables, frequently asked questions, so on and so forth. It gave me some high level recommendations. And then what I did is I had to kind of give it a little context. Okay, I'm in somewhere town in the southeastern United States. I just made up a town because I didn't want to list somebody, and y'all know how that goes. Anyway, so Somewhereville, and we have a population of 4,500. We have a public park near downtown district. Our senior citizens enjoy it. There's a walking trail nearby that leads back to the town of about 1 mile. We have an idea that we want to put some park benches in there to give people places to rest as they walk, and so on and so forth. And I wanted it to use standard cost estimates, recommend how many park benches there needed to be. I told it couldn't exceed a $30,000 budget. And then I asked, made sure that give me some justification on how this grant will benefit senior citizens, given that it's an AARP grant. Okay, so it understands. There's something in there about tipping ChatGPT. If you tell it you're going to tip it, it might do a little bit better job. So I put that in there anyway, that, hey, if you do a good job, I'm going to give you a $200 tip. If you don't do it, it kind of remembers that at some point and might ask you why you didn't tip it. But so anyway, it gave me a grant outline. Again, as we go through it, it gave me some detailed instructions. I told it it did great. And then what we did is we went straight through the grant, and we started building each section at a time. So we went through needs objectives, help benefits, project objectives. They wanted to do 10 durable benches. We did an implementation plan with a timeline. It did a budget, and what I wanted it to do, what I asked it to do is give me a little more information about this budget, because I may need to look at some different procurement solutions, locally. So I wanted to know things about materials. And it redid my budget for me. Hold on a minute. I had it redo my budget for me. Somewhere in here. Anyway, it redid my budget and told me more about what the park benches were going to be made from, so that, again, if I needed to look at some other sources, I could do that. We went down, evaluated the project's input or impact, and we just pretty much went through the entire grant here. It did a great job. I gave it its $200 tip. And so what you would do with this is you would take this and put it in an application, and then you want a human to actually review it and make additional adjustments. One of the things about any of these GPTs is you don't want to have one person with one skill set. You can't put them in front of a planning GPT if they're not a planner or have any experience with planners, and expect them to produce an expert planning level document. It's really, these tools are enhancers, so it would help to have a planner working with a chat GPT to do this stuff, and then reviewing it and making adjustments to language. So no matter what it does, don't ever trust this stuff 100%. Again, the other GPTs, if you load them up, I've got a button in there that says tell me about your services, and it'll tell you the things that they do, and you can kind of query it from there. But I did want to give y'all an example. I mean, everybody loves grants, so this is a entry level like grant GPT that can field a lot of the stuff you would normally see in a nonprofit or foundation type grant application. Okay, so with that, I'm done, Micah. I'm gonna turn my screen share off, and thanks for allowing me to present today.
Well, thank you, Robert. Really, really cool GPTs, and we'll, like I said, like the same with David's presentation and the audio from Nichole's as well in her survey. We'll get that out to everyone here. That way, you can take a look at that and go explore some of Robert's GPTs as well too. So, real quick as we wrap up here, just want to show you how to connect with Robert on LinkedIn. So here's his LinkedIn QR code. Feel free to connect with him, reach out to him, and pick his brain on GPTs, how to create different GPTs, what he uses them for, and even things in terms of like GPT teams and whatnot that he's doing with over in his cog as well. So with that being said, thank you so much to everyone who attended today, and to all those who are going to view this on YouTube later on too. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Special thank you to Nichole and David and Robert for their time and the effort they put in their presentations. Truly appreciate that. So thank you all. And until next time, next Monday, I believe our next Monday meeting is, with my calendar quick here, I believe it's the 8th of April. Sorry, the 1st of April. Say it again. So April 1st, April Fool's Day. It will not be April Fool's joke. We will actually be meeting here again 11:30 on that first Monday in April. So hope you can join and learn more with us, and as we spur innovation, share knowledge, and foster collaboration among AI and local government. Until then, be well and thank you.